This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I'm kind of under a cap tonight because I'm not enjoying my COVID haircut. But I'm here with Eugene Mlynczyk, Master of Wine, who is joining us all the way from a very frosty Niagara Falls.
Cheers. Actually, in the background, of course, because I've got my little corner of one room in the house where in COVID-19 times, the whole family being sequestered, you don't want to see what's behind me. So it is Niagara Falls on a very cool day. I'm channeling that coolness because mostly now it's been air conditioning galore, 30, 32 Celsius with days on end, which would shock people that believe in Canada as a cool climate country, and also as normally they would be this weekend for the International Cool Climate Chardonnay celebration that happens every year for the last decade, but sadly remote this year and not in person.
I'm looking forward to that tomorrow, actually. I think that's going to
I
be
am too.
a
It
good
should be
session.
fun.
Yeah.
Andrew Jefford, a fantastic writer who will be giving this keynote address. And tomorrow I will definitely open some Chardonnay, probably Le Clos Jourdain, an older vintage, which I love and that's in my portfolio.
So, Eugene, how has, in your role working with Arterra, how has the pandemic, the ongoing pandemic, impacted you?
Me personally in the company, like many other people, I don't want to say the same thing, but it's true. We've been working remotely. It seems like Zoom meetings, present company excluded, just meetings on end. Sometimes forgetting to take lunch or eating dinner late because your hours have changed, and
Yeah.
maybe a sense of freedom a little bit. The freedom, interesting to say that when we're actually trapped in our own bubbles or houses, but the freedom of not having to commute, of being able to connect with people far away. So trying to see, I know we've said this before, and it's a cliched phrase, but the glass half full. And there've been some small positive aspects here, although I do want to break out of the mode and get back to whatever normal life is in the long run.
Coming from your position, and what the numbers that you have access to, how have you seen consumer purchasing changing throughout this time?
A lot of it doesn't relate to my portfolio where I deal with principal fine wines. It's a team within Arterra that's responsible
Yeah.
for our highest end wines, which is great. I've been in this role now for about a year and a half, and most people don't know that we exist within Arterra. But my colleagues, I'm very connected with them, and we've had our production team in Niagara really working hard to keep up with our entry-level wines, bag-and-box wines, our 1.5 liter wines. This is what people are doing. I guess it's a continuation of back in March when I struggled to find any toilet paper anywhere. You could have perhaps gone into an LCBO and struggled to find any decent bag-and-box wine available, or most of the really popular, 1. Taken off the shelves. That's been probably the biggest trend. And the other element is, in the highest end, I don't think people have stopped buying that can still, luckily, or privileged enough to not have been impacted too much, still keep buying higher end wines during this time. It's the middle that has been squeezed, and maybe that's the lower middle, not the lower middle class, but the lower middle price bands, maybe $15 to $20, or maybe above $20, but not much more than that. So cheap and cheerful, large formats, ready to drink, or cans as well, including cans being quite popular. And for me, not a seeing of a trailing off of the luxury end. That's the summary.
Do you feel that people are going for brands that they recognize? Because that whole discovery aspect of going into a store, for example, picking up a bottle, having a look at the back label, that's kind of gone.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that statement, Jamie. And to the point where I felt like not quite a criminal when I went into some vintages stores with my mask on, and I was shopping and browsing in the vintages section. There's the key thing: browsing, not like, what are you looking for? You're supposed to come in with this mission, and you go and get what you need, and you leave, and you've shopped within
Well,
6.
well, you have someone behind you as well, right? Waiting to get through the chevrons that are taking you through the store.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, I could be standing in one spot wanting to peruse the back labels or look at something in a section of vintages, like some Loire wines I don't drink as often as I probably should, and wanting to consider which Chinon would I want to buy. And I would say honestly, I felt guilty standing for too long, so I didn't do that very often. But I did do the equivalent of browsing online, and I did place a few orders through the LCBO online, and also through one or two consignment purchases through other companies. And that's been what a lot of people have been doing. I think the direct to consumer channel has step changed during COVID-19, and all the people that should know are saying that it will not change going forward. It will stay at some increasingly higher level on an ongoing basis.
How have Arterra had to pivot with regards to their online sales throughout this pandemic?
Well, one of the main things certainly would have been just staffing levels at either the wineries or where we were fulfilling orders. And I know that some of my colleagues
Of
based in
course.
Niagara, like my good friend Maria Mosner, who was the Somm at Inniskillen for many years and is, I call her the Queen of Niagara, with Niagara behind me here virtually. And she was volunteering and working at the winery to pack orders that were shipped. This was one of the challenges. Other logistical challenges were simply around keeping things in production. And again, I'm thinking of local here more than wines from away. And one area we've been working on, and we still need to work on, is availability of more import wines through some direct channels, because other than being in the US, where if you're in one of the lucky states, you can order wines from all over the place, from California, et cetera. We're not ordering those directly from those wineries that we represent in California or in Italy and elsewhere.
How much of Arterra's sales went through restaurants?
Oh, I can probably talk about the diminishment of the sales, but I guess it would depend on which province, because now my role is
Yeah,
more
yeah.
national, and whether it's domestic or import. So I don't want to quote an incorrect number. I would say, though, that the sales dropped, like many people, for many weeks to zero or close to zero, and
Mhm.
then rose maybe sometime in May or June to like 5 or 10% of what they were before, and probably are at about the same for the industry. So just a smidgen of what they were, but nobody is pushing, and I don't think anybody really should, because restaurants have got a lot of inventory they're sitting on, and it's really all about survival, and it is save hospitality, and I certainly encourage all of those efforts. We need to think about our friends in hospitality big time.
Speaking about saving hospitality, I mean, you've been in the wine world for a long time. I come from a sommelier background. What do you see as the future of the sommelier in these trying times? I mean, with social distancing, the sommelier role is somewhat diminished, would you not say, or challenged?
If it does relate, Jamie, to that browsing question or topic of would you explore, the sommelier is often in a room or in an establishment to help you explore and give you the comfort of some knowledge or professional background, not necessarily education, but sometimes on you should try this if you like this, and here's why. And lacking maybe COVID-19, the even with restaurants reopening at half capacity, how much time will you spend, or would you want your sommelier spending with you at the
Yeah,
table?
yeah.
Is that value added, or is that like, please don't stay with me too long because we need to maintain our social distance? Having said that, and I think we had maybe in previous discussions talked about the role of the sommelier, and I respect somms so much because I've never been a somm, never worked on the floor, but I've seen what they do, and the best of them do what I think Gerard Basset would say, passed away last year, of course, and I have this written here in the corner of my desk on a little pad of paper, something very close to what he said, which is, the sommelier is not in charge, the customer is in charge. And that points to that maxim of the customer is always right. And we should find a way to determine what these tastes and individual needs are and fulfill those needs, etc. There's so much room and latitude for exploration, and not everybody likes the same thing. The only thing I would want sommeliers to do is to help people leave their biases behind and explore something, at least occasionally, that's a bit out of your comfort zone.
But how do you think this will relate to the new normal that we're living in, Eugene?
From a SOM perspective, is
Yes.
that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah.
Maybe SOMs will simply have to also do additional roles that many of them do in smaller restaurants, where they also manage the floor, they work the floor. They're going to be hands-on in other aspects than just being able to focus in one role. And that certainly may be the case as many fewer staff are potentially employed when you're only got 50% occupancy. That's the short term. The longer term, I hope that 3 to 4 years from now, and maybe not nearly even that long, that we see sommeliers playing the role that I just described, and kind of back to that nice normal humbleness that the best Psalms always have. Is like, I know what I know, I Eugene know what I know, or you Jamie, but I'm going to help you find and you discover on your path, and help nudge you in a certain direction. Listen to what you have to say, and listening, seeing what your responses are, really assisting you. So Psalms as assistants, but not assistant managers, as assistants to the customers.
Another thing I think I should bring up, with you being a master of wine and the like, throughout the course of this pandemic, we've seen some other stuff going on. There have been questions asked of the lack of diversity within our industry. These concerns have been addressed to both the Institute of Masters of Wine and the Court of Masters Sommelier. How do you feel about their responses, and what is the positive path forward for us throughout this?
It's a very relevant question, and probably one we should have got to a lot sooner than we have. If we look across our industry, it's clear there is no diversity that, I was going to say, mimics the diversity of where I grew up near Toronto, or any one of our multicultural communities. And we don't need to necessarily match, but we need, I mean, to a T, but we need to recognize that we could go into someone's cellar, and I think John Zabo did. My friend John Zabo, Master Sommelier, went into his cellar on a video to look and see, could he find a single bottle from a Black-owned winery, or a female-led winery. Female-led winery might have been easier, or Indigenous winery. And I think on that particular example, he found the cupboard bare. My one example that's positive, in my own cellar, I know I can go down there and find some bottles of Inkameep Cellars wines from the South Okanagan, where the Osoyoos Indian Band has been a
Yeah.
partner for many years, and that's cool. But is that enough? That's not enough. Clearly, we have not even scratched the surface with where we need to go. Again, the Institute of Masters of Wine, of which I am a member, has issued some statements, but is in a phase, I know, of discovery term to understand what more can be done, and will do quite a bit more. The Institute of Masters of Wine North America, which is a team or a wing within the Institute of Masters of Wine, is also been having some very active discussions, and actions are also happening on the West Coast. I know with Martin Reyes, Master of Wine, and Mary Margaret McCamick, Master of Wine, having led a couple ventures out there. And we've, again, just started, got to do a lot more, clearly.
Yeah, I was actually horrified the other 2 weeks ago to doing my research on the archives of Good Food Revolution. I'd only actually interviewed, I guess, one winemaker of color over the course of 10 years. And
Yes.
I started asking questions about why that was the case. And I really have to work towards something new with that. That's for sure. I guess to end all of this on a very positive note, because I like to do that, Eugene. Um,
Glass half
uh,
full, absolutely.
I I would like to ask you about how this entire pandemic has impacted you in a positive way, with personally with your family, with work, and but perhaps with culture, what you've been listening to, watching, all of that stuff.
Well, personally, unlike a lot of folks that say we're close and cozy with all of our family together, at times we've, rubbed shoulders or gotten on each other's nerves in our 5 people in our small house here. But on the other hand, we've also done a lot of things. I've been going for hikes at the end of most days, hikes meaning short walks really, at local county forests here in Simcoe County with my son Tio. And my daughter Celeste has been cooking up a storm with mostly vegetarian-led cookbooks because she's a vegetarian, but she's been doing that as well. So it's been great to see her do that. In terms of work, it's been probably a little bit too much of realization of how many meetings can we possibly have, and are all of them really required. But we've been respecting each other's space a little bit by making sure we've trying to absolutely needed, and not having the extra fluff, because you still need working time. And your final third part of your question, which is culturally, what have been we doing? Well, literally a week and a half ago, we went down to the Art Gallery of Ontario with masks, where we were allowed to go, and the exhibit of Diana Arbus had reopened. So that was amazing to see that with my son Tio had come down with me that day. Other than that, we've been watching a lot of movies. My son watches Black Mirror. I've watched a couple of those episodes, interesting to see. My daughter binge watching RuPaul's Drag Race with Brooklyn Heights coming in second in this past season. All right, I know. Return to the Chateau. But if you ask me what I've been watching, it's been more of stuff from the Criterion Collection and
Yeah.
Canopy, another channel, including Tarkovsky's Stalker, which is a classic, Europa by Lars von Trier. I think I need to go back and watch what I've only seen snippets of with his TV series you may have heard of called, I was going to say The Hospital. That's not what it's called, though, is it? In the mid 90s,
Kingdom.
Lars.
It's called The Kingdom.
The Kingdom, exactly, and
Yeah.
pretty tongue-in-cheek as I remember it. So that's something that I need to get to that I haven't got to yet. But the watching of Europa has brought me there.
Kingdom, I actually went to a cinema for an all-nighter to watch the entire series of The Kingdom.
It's a mini series, I suppose we would call it, right?
Yeah, but it lasted 8 hours, so
Okay,
you went there, and the ending is absolutely horrific.
I did not see the ending, so you're telling me not to watch it to the end. All right.
Anyway, it's not exactly joyful, but
Well, there you are. I've watched Grizzly Man by Werner Herzog too, and that's not a joyful ending either. So
on that note,
on that note,
Mlynczyk, it's always a pleasure to spend some time with you and to have a Thursday night glass of wine. Talk
I know
about
with my virtual background, you can't quite see it, but what I haven't been drinking a lot of this year, but in my life in general, but this year, rosé, dry rosé. Cheers, absolutely.
It's funny, rosé does not show up with when you have the Zoom background. I've noticed that with friends, it doesn't show very well.
Aha.
Huh.
You can see it a little
Anyway,
bit there.
I'm gonna say goodnight to you tonight. I have to give my family a cuddle, and thank you, Eugene.
Well, thank you very much, Jamie. It's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot,
Take care.
and be well. Stay safe.
Bye for now.
Take care.